My son's fiancée teased me when we first met. Your dad didn't even finish middle school, she remarked, laughing. Can a person with such poor grades even get employment? I can't believe he dropped out of high school and doesn't even work, her father added. Furthermore, they excluded me from the meal and simply served themselves. The fiancé's mother gleefully clarified, I cook only for my family. A family get-together was attended by the statement, I've never seen parents act this way. I made the decision to defend myself since I felt degraded by both my kid and other people. Say what you want, I told them. And then, exasperated, I left the restaurant. This year, I turned 60 years old. My name is Stephen Walker. 25-year-old Michael is my son. He doesn't come around much, and our connection is rough. I often feel guilty for not raising him properly, especially since my wife died when Michael was a small child. My wife passed away at the age of 45, having been weak since childhood. I didn't care about the snide looks from family members at her funeral. Like a kid, I felt lost. Michael, my son, persevered and begged me to say goodbye to Mom. But my grief persisted only through the burial. I was managing a real estate company that my father had started at the time. I received calls from clients when I got up the day following my wife's burial. I had to take care of Michael on my own and satisfy my obligations. Those urgent calls jolted me out of my daze, and I hurried to my office. Simultaneously, I started attending school events and PTA meetings, trying to fill the void left by my wife. But handling work and school commitments alone proved too much. I reluctantly closed my business temporarily and passed my clients to another agency to focus on being there for Michael. However, when I showed up at one of Michael's school events, he glared at me and said, Dad, I told you not to come. He even whispered, Don't let anyone know you're my dad, leaving me feeling like a stranger. Today, as I participate in PTA activities, I wear a name tag with the name Walker, unsure of where I truly belong. I couldn't understand why my son suddenly started ignoring me, but it didn't take long for me to figure it out. Isn't that your dad over there? What's he doing at school on a weekday? Doesn't he have a job? My mom remarked. I heard your dad lost his job after your mom passed away. One of Michael's classmates chimed in. Michael stayed quiet, avoiding eye contact as the teasing continued. I hurried over, trying to explain. I'm just taking a break from work. It's like your summer or winter vacation. But instead of easing the situation, my words only made things worse for Michael. His classmates mocked him further, saying things like, Your dad's just pretending to take a break. Your family must be struggling financially. Feeling guilty, I realized my attempt to help only backfired as Michael faced more ridicule from his classmates. His resentment towards me grew. I felt powerless as I witnessed his suffering, unable to intervene. Countless nights, I found myself in tears, overwhelmed by a sense of helplessness. As Michael entered middle school, he began associating with troubled peers, spending nights away from home and loitering in gas station parking lots until late hours. Cell phones were rare back then, making it difficult to track his whereabouts. With each passing day, Michael's absences increased, leaving me clueless about his activities. I could only apologize when the school called to report complaints from nearby establishments. Whenever I visited Michael's school, he and his unruly friends hurled insults and projectiles at me, further deepening my feelings of inadequacy. Michael's behavior had taken a dangerous turn since starting middle school, leaving me terrified to confront him, fearing his unpredictable reactions. Reflecting on my parenting during his elementary years, I wished I had handled things differently. but I struggled to determine the right approach for addressing his behavior. Communicating with a teenager seemed like an insurmountable challenge, leaving me feeling lost and helpless. Michael showed no regard for attending school, frequently skipping classes and even running away during lessons. His academic performance plummeted to the lowest point. During a parent-teacher conference, they mentioned a private high school where Michael could enroll, bringing me a sense of relief. I was grateful that there was an option for him to continue his education. I hoped that the new environment and different classmates would positively influence him, leading to a change in his behavior. Thankfully, after starting high school, Michael began to take his studies more seriously. He dedicated himself to his classes, improving his test scores to above-average levels, and eventually securing admission to college. Despite his academic progress, his attitude toward me remained unchanged. He continued to spend little time at home, moving from one friend's house to another. Upon entering college, he opted to live alone in a dorm and supported himself with part-time work to pay his tuition. While I admired his independence, his relationship with me remained distant. Even after he started his job, he showed no inclination to reconnect with his family. One day, completely out of the blue, Michael, whom I hadn't seen for years, called me. He said, "I'm planning to get married," then added, "We're meeting at a fancy restaurant next Sunday at 2:00 p.m. Without considering my schedule, I was taken aback by the suddenness of it all. But when I expressed my concerns, he simply responded, "If you can't make it, don't bother," and hung up abruptly. Despite feeling conflicted, I couldn't deny that he was my only son, so I decided to attend the meeting for his sake. When I arrived at the restaurant, his future in-laws were already there, greeting me with rudeness. I retorted, feeling annoyed by their attitude, but they denied having invited me at all. They were as cold as Michael had been on the phone. Meanwhile, Michael stood there with a smirk, seeming like he was up to something. Unsure of his intentions, I reluctantly entered the restaurant. However, instead of discussing Michael's relationship with Sarah, they directed their attention towards me, treating me like an unwelcome guest. To my dismay, Michael began criticizing me in front of Sarah and her family, disregarding the inappropriate timing and setting. Despite my protests, he continued unabated. To make matters worse, Sarah burst into laughter, mocking, "Seriously, can someone even find a job with just a middle school education?" Her father chimed in, praising Michael for having a college degree and a job at a prestigious company, contrasting him with me, a high school dropout. Exhausted and frustrated, I almost uttered, "Say what you want. I'm leaving." But before I could, a waiter arrived with the food, apologizing for the delay. I had been so worked up that I had forgotten we hadn't even been served yet. Trying to calm myself down, I resolved to eat quickly and leave. However, when the food arrived, it was only from Michael, Sarah, and her parents. The waiter explained that they had a reservation for 4, giving me a disapproving look. Sarah's mother dismissed me, saying, "He's not part of our family, so don't worry about him," with a fake smile. Feeling humiliated, I watched as the waiter awkwardly retreated. Just as I was about to lose my temper, Sarah's dad interrupted me sharply, declaring, "We don't associate with high school dropouts like you. Our family is filled with bank employees and doctors from top companies. You don't belong here. Please leave." His words stung, and I couldn't hold back. "Is education and job status all that matter to you? Seems like your priorities are a bit skewed," I retorted as I stood to depart. In response, Sarah's dad boasted about his job at Bank of America, emphasizing the importance of education and work history. As I made my exit, I sarcastically acknowledged his accomplishments, but they paid me no heed. The following day, I visited Bank of America, where Sarah's dad worked. Despite being labeled a deadbeat by my son, his peers, and Sarah's family, I knew I wasn't one. After my wife's passing, I temporarily closed my real estate business to focus on my son's well-being. However, I want to make it clear that it was only a temporary measure. Following her death, I transitioned my business to online management to prioritize my involvement in my son's school activities and PTA meetings. When I operated a physical store, my clients were mostly local neighbors. However, transitioning to online management opened doors to a wider clientele, including people from small towns located far from the nearest train station and even Americans living abroad. This shift allowed me to receive more inquiries about renting and buying properties from these individuals. The internet enabled me to expand my property portfolio and reach a broader audience, turning what once seemed like a dream into reality. Moreover, I had a keen interest in stocks and investments, which I pursued as a hobby. Currently, I have $15 million invested in Bank of America, where Sarah's dad worked. Upon reaching the bank, I immediately requested to speak with the branch manager and recounted the events from the previous day. One of your employees mentioned that this bank values trust based on educational background and work history. Due to that statement, I've lost faith in this bank. Could you please proceed with closing my account? The branch manager apologized profusely and explained the account closure process, visibly distressed. Oh, I almost forgot something important. There's a tenant in one of my apartments who hasn't paid rent for 2 years. I've been lenient because he's my son, but not anymore. I sent him a notice demanding payment for 2 years' worth of rent. 3 days later, Sarah's dad and my son barged into my house, fuming. Why did you report me to the branch manager? That was sneaky, Dad. And what's with the eviction notice? If you're the landlord, at least cover for me. I sighed and replied, I lost trust in the bank after hearing about their judgmental practices. Are you panicking because of one person's comment? Do you have something to hide? And Michael, being family doesn't excuse you from paying rent. Pay up. Sarah's dad retorted, because of your actions, I received complaints from other clients. My boss even reprimanded me. How dare you? I didn't cause trouble. I simply shared the story with relatives and clients. I didn't tell them to close their accounts. I responded calmly. My son lashed out. What clients, Dad? You're just a deadbeat, right? How could a deadbeat afford to build a huge house like this in such a prime location and still live like this? I even did some renovations recently. I explained, but he looked puzzled, saying, Huh? What's that? Did you go into debt or something? I'm really fed up with you. I took a break from my real estate job for a while, then switched to running an online business, which I'm still doing. How many times do I have to explain I'm not a bum? I told him, and he turned pale. What? I had no clue. I thought you were just working part-time. Sarah's dad yelled, You're a real piece of work, keeping your occupation secret even from your own son. Annoyed, I replied, Say what you want, and closed the door. Outside, I heard them shouting, You've ruined my reputation. I'm going to sue you. I can't believe I've been fooled by my old man for so long. After about 10 minutes of yelling, it seemed they grew tired, and the commotion quieted down. I figured they wouldn't bother returning once they realized their shouting was for nothing. With a sigh of relief, I headed to the kitchen to brew a cup of coffee. Suddenly, I heard my son's voice outside again, accusing me of being a liar. Peering out the window, I saw Sarah's dad and my son spray painting my front door. "You've got to be kidding me. What are they up to?" Just as I prepared to confront them, the sound of approaching police sirens caught my attention. Could it be that someone in the neighborhood had called the cops? My suspicion proved correct. Stepping outside, I found the two of them being detained by the police in response to a neighbor's complaint. "There he is, that liar. He's ruined my reputation at work," they shouted as the officers calmly escorted them into the patrol car, assuring me, "We'll handle it from here." One of the officers, noticing me, approached with an oddly cheerful demeanor. "Sir, would you mind coming with us to provide your statement?" "Why me?" "But I'm the one who's been wronged here," I thought. I'll spill all the details on their mischief. As we arrived at the police station, showing the officers a video from my phone captured by the security camera at my front door, I revealed the entirety of their yelling and antics. "This is excellent evidence," the officer exclaimed excitedly, and my interrogation concluded swiftly. My son and Sarah's dad received a stern warning from the police and were required to sign a restraining order to stay away from me. As it turned out, the entire neighborhood had witnessed their bizarre behavior. One of my son's co-workers, who lived nearby, had been gossiping about it at the office. "Hey, you won't believe it, but Michael was caught spray painting his own father's house and got taken away by the cops," they exclaimed. I was astonished. Thankfully, I had recorded the entire incident. My son's reputation took a nosedive at work and among clients, resulting in his demotion by his boss. I decided to report the incident once more to Bank of America, where Sarah's dad was employed. Upon showing the manager the security footage from my phone, his expression turned ashen. It wasn't long before I heard that Sarah's dad had been dismissed from his job. Naturally, Sarah called off the engagement with Michael. Both Michael and Sarah's family relocated to a rural area where they found work at a gas station run by my brother. However, they struggled to adapt, and I had to let them go due to their incompetence. Word around town was that other nearby businesses had similar experiences with Sarah's parents, who couldn't hold down a steady job. They bounced between gigs at gas stations and farms as a couple. I also discovered that Sarah had accumulated a large debt as a result of giving luxury gifts, including watches, to her partners, including my son. Her parents were in financial pressure since they had to utilize their part-time income to pay off her debts. The question of how they made ends meet still persists. After 5 years, my son, who is now 30, appears to have changed for the better. He relocated to a little town, and after he experienced kindness there, he came to me a couple of times and deeply apologized for his previous behavior. "I was a novice and unskilled. I ignored you as a useless person without even trying to comprehend what you did for a living. I really regret doing it." My son's attitude changed, and I made the decision to extend an invitation to move in with him. He currently works for a business close to my house and progressively helps me out with my work. To be clear, he still has a lot to learn, so I'm not sure I can put all of my trust in him just yet. Even though I'm apprehensive to give him complete control over my duties, I'll carefully consider his work ethic and attitude before making any decisions. If he shows that he has truly changed, I might think about giving him administration of my company. I'll keep my ideas to myself, though, because if I mention this, he might become unduly excited and resign on the spur of the moment. I hope that one day, when I live with my son, I will be at ease and able to put all my trust in him.